The optimal sales hire at the product market fit phase is way different than the next phases we're going to get to. Like, you do not want the top salesperson from Salesforce.com. Like, when that person joined Salesforce, they went through a month of like rigorous training with the decks and the pitch books and the manager and the CRM and the objection handling blueprint and the comp plan. And they're just like, let me go make a lot of money. If they come into your company right now, when you're trying to find product market fit, they're just going to come back and say, it's not working. Like, you need someone who like can reflect on the patterns and talk to engineers and help you iterate. Like, it's a very different person. And the same is true in how you generate demand, and the same is true in how you think about the sales process. So I just want to, like, at this moment, just help us see those two frameworks.
Brilliant. Mark, you're very, very welcome to the ScaleX Insider Podcast. Delighted and thrilled to have you on the show today.
Honored to be here, Brendan. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm really excited for this conversation. We've been chatting off the air. You know, our vision is to inspire, connect, and enable millions of ambitious leaders of small and medium-sized enterprises to scale with purpose. So, Mark, I kick off the show with this question to all of our guests. What does scaling with purpose mean to you?
You know, I just feel like scale is a privilege and not a right, if that makes sense. You know, and I think like we've lost our way over the last decade. I just think so many business owners and founders, you know, they just think capital should be available, and they just think like they should just build a product and it should just go. And really, it's very hard. It, like, even for the best of the best, it's hard to actually invent something, whether it's a business or service or product, that has a place in the world and has pull. And like, it's okay if you try something and it doesn't work, but you know, when you get that magic, you've actually earned that right to scale, but it doesn't happen as often as you think.
I absolutely love that. It's a privilege, not a right. And I feel strongly that when you have brought something of value to an audience, then we assert that you have an obligation then to bring that to the world. And that's where the science of scaling, the scaling frameworks really come into their own at that point. But the fact that it's a privilege, not a right. I love that. I mean, we heard in your wonderful bio, you were one of the early founding members of the sales team there at HubSpot. I was checking just before I came on air. Its market cap is almost 50 billion, which is incredible. Okay. So given the fact that you were part of that journey from zero to over $100 million in revenue, you built out a sales team from yourself to kind of hundreds of people within your sales team. On reflection now, and this is a book in its own right, appreciate this, but on reflection now, kind of what are one or two of the key lessons from that journey that you feel every founder, every scaling or aspirational scaling leader should know?
Well, I think I'll pull on two. One that I learned, you know, from our leadership, namely Brian Halligan, our CEO. And then one that I probably instigated by luck because of my wiring up until that point. All right. So the first one that I learned from Brian Halligan was sort of business is always at stake. And I do feel like they still operate that now, like that now. It's like, I mean, if you look back on the Fortune 500 here in the US, and the companies that were listed there in, say, the 1960s, you know, 50, 60 years ago, I think there's less than 40 left, right? So it's just like scale, you know, your size doesn't mean you're a permanent fixture in the world. Like, you're always at risk. And that's how he and we operated. And I do think like a lot of companies, like when they're starting out, they operate that. You've got nothing to lose. right? You're just like pivoting, changing, go, break things. You have this mentality. And then I've seen it like founders, they get to, it takes them years and they get to 10 million, they get to 20 million, they get to 50 million. And then they have this mentality like, let's not break it, right? And that I think that hinders like growth and excellence is you've got to kind of always put the company at risk as you have conviction around where things are going. And they're still doing that now. I think you have to right now, especially as we embark on the age of AI, which like, depending on who you believe, and I'm probably on the aggressive end of the spectrum on like how profound this change is. I think some people debate in their head whether internet or AI is going to be bigger. I think AI is on par with like fire and electricity in terms of like the invention and the change. And it just like rewrites the book. And so like that mentality is critical. Um, I guess the second one is, how much, and this is the one that I sort of like, I feel like I brought at least to the go-to-market engine, and it was by luck, due to the background that I had coming into selling and building the sales role, building out the sales team, which I'd never done before. I wasn't like a career salesperson. I was an engineer. I wrote code. I studied at MIT. Like I just have a very different wiring at the time anyway. I think more people have gone in this direction, but than most sales leaders. And on top of that, I found myself in this role at a profound time in the historical arc of go-to-market, where, we were on the advent of the invention of the internet and its adoption amongst the business community. And sales was going from this practice that was largely down out in the field, where we struggled immensely from getting any CRM adoption to suddenly it was moving toward more of an inside sales practice where the tech landscape had evolved so much that we had gone from a basically like, how do I get the data to a what do I do with all this data? And that's being like a kid in a candy store for someone like myself who is going to look to solve everything through data wherever I can. Not because I'm trying to like write a book or talk about it, just because I'm trying to survive. And that's how I'm wired. So I would say like the second one is just really, um, you know, at HubSpot, we did say, in God we trust, all else bring data, right? So like just to be a data-driven execution team, you have probably more opportunities in that than you think.
Yeah, so profound. What I'm hearing in the context of our own 10 principle ScaleX framework is your psyche, the psyche right at the outset has maintained in terms of that founder's psyche that
Mm,
we've nothing to risk. Let's continue to innovate and to break things, to test things so that we're always pushing boundaries. And you haven't allowed kind of comfort or complacency or the market or a board or stakeholders to uh, disrupt or soil or contaminate that psyche throughout the journey. I'm really curious about that. You come across as a really calm, cool guy. We were chatting off air. You, what did you guys do to maintain this scaling psyche as we refer? Because
mm,
we say your psyche either empowers the other nine principles of scaling. It either empowers the scaling journey or it actually impedes. Clearly for you guys it empowered. So I kind of want to open the lid on your psyche and
mm,
the other founder's psyche.
yeah.
How would you
I
characterize
mean, it
it?
was really Brian and Dharmesh that drove it, and it's like a lot of us, the initial team came out of MIT together, so we had a similar like, I guess upbringing, I suppose, of like how they think about entrepreneurship. And we were coming out of this wave of like, beautiful authors like Clay Christensen's and his Innovator's Dilemma, right? And so those were, you know, obsessive things for us. Blue Ocean Strategy was a big influencer. So I think it was just really the underlying wiring. I'm trying to think like my psyche. I love talking about this because I'm often asked about the data side and it forces me to talk about the qualitative side, which takes more like, harder reflections. Um, I think like I can tell you what it is for me concretely today. And I think it was happening more accidentally back then. And I think coming out the other side of HubSpot, there's a point in my life where I rested a little bit. And as I rested, I just like my spirituality grew, if it's okay for me to talk about that. Like I'd
Absolutely.
always been a relatively spiritual individual. I won't go into the too of the details because this, it's more of a business podcast. But like whether or not you're spiritual or not, I do think like extreme motivation and purpose can be derived when you do significant reflection on your unique wiring. Because all of us are a very unique person. Even if you have a twin sibling, that twin is different. So the more that we can reflect on what our unique gifts are and try to like, you know, figure out how those gifts should be applied to the world around us to make it a better place. That like that like aligns the psyche for me. That you like know that you're following your purpose. And like today I'm very proactive and explicit about that. And that just brings so much motivation to me. That helps me get through, all the hurdles, which they're plentiful no matter what you do. And I think back then I wasn't as like in tune with that mentality, but I was actually doing it. Like I was just like an inspired entrepreneur that had found like I knew that was my purpose. I knew that was my passion, having tried so many different types of contexts early in my career. And I think that's what if we get out of the quant and stay in the qualitative, just like that calling, I suppose, was a big motivator for me.
Yeah, you mentioned Clay Christensen. I'm a huge fan. I read it regularly. Measure what matter. How will we measure our life? Measure what matters is John Doerr's book. How will we measure our life? And I also think when you talk about spirituality in the context of a business podcast, I interviewed Dr. Jim Lear, who is the author of kind of 17, 18 books. One
Nice.
of those being the power of full engagement. And he says, we don't manage our time, you manage your energy. And it's managed
Mm.
across four ways: our physical, our emotional, our mental, and our spiritual. And when we talk about spirituality, it's literally just a recognition that we're connected to, or certainly this entrepreneurial journey should have greater meaning than just pounds and pence at the other end. That's a byproduct of actually pursuing something I feel with a deeper meaning. So this resonates strongly. Before we move off that, are there any practices that are non-negotiable for you now that kind of undergird this really calm, robust scaling psyche that you have?
Um, well, I think like, yeah, we'll get to some of the frameworks and stuff, but I just think the psyche part, um, I would say you just have to be so disciplined on your time. And that has to be looked at holistically, both professional and personal. That was critical for me. That's critical for me today as I'm so blessed to have so many inbound demands for my time and requests for my time. And it was critical for me back then, as someone in his late 20s or early 30s that had some big aspirations, both personally and professionally, to be a very successful entrepreneur, but to be a great parent. You know what I mean? And also to like not die of a heart attack when I'm 40, right? So like, um, So that like I've always sort of time boxed, you know what I mean? Like I have always booked my calendar out 2 months in advance. And when I do that, the first thing I do is I put in like when I'm going to be a parent, right? And then I put in like when I'm going to work out. And then I put in like when I'm going to pray. And then I put in like, today I put in like, when is my, venture capital investing side and portfolio support side? When is my HBS office hours and student prep side? And it adds up to be a rigorous schedule. The venture capital firm by itself is more than a full-time job. And then you throw on top of that teaching in the late fall and early winter, being, dad and everything, and it's rigorous. But that proactivity, I think, is critical. And I don't think a lot of people do that. I think a lot of people just like let the schedule fill up reactively. And what usually wins out is whoever's calling hardest for you at that moment. And I think if you look back on a week or a month, you're not aligned with what you would hope would be the allocation of time across those elements. Right. So yeah, if we're just talking psyche outside of like where I usually speak, that has been important like technique to preserve that psyche.
Yeah, this resonates so strongly. It's something also surprises me, and I coach CEOs on this practice through our own 12-month ScaleX Accelerator program. I actually color code my diary. So
Yeah,
like
me
you,
too, exactly. Right.
yellow is my well-being. It's my personal time.
Yeah.
My time away with the kids is in orange. Time away with Colleen is in green. So I populate all of that, and I've
Beautiful.
resisted saying to people because I think it's a paradigm when people say, "Well, how's things at the moment? Are you busy?" I don't say that word busy anymore. I say my calendar is full, but it's full of fulfilling things. So the calendar's always full, but it's full of those things that I want to be doing. You
Amazing.
mentioned purpose, and just coming to the second principle of our ScaleX framework, purpose and vision, because I think they go hand in glove. Before we get into the data, I'm curious to know how purpose and vision actually then inform what you start to look at with the data. When we'll get into that in a moment, but how important is a compelling purpose and clarity of a vision, do you feel, in the context of actually
Mm.
scaling a business?
It's critical. It's critical. I mean, I don't know, when was it? Was it Peter Drucker way back when that like it kind of like pushed forward like that we solve for shareholder value? And I think that mentality has been challenged quite a bit in the last few decades, and rightfully so. It's too much dollars and cents. And of course, that's one of it's a critical outcome, and that's the point of a business, is to, part of it is to return for the investors, and that has to be a given. It's like breathing, it's air. Um, but there's a broader viewpoint on it in terms of the impact and the mission that it has. And that's something that I think like the generation right before us, Brendan, right after us, I think really brought to our world. And it's fun to see them in the driver's seat now. I remember hiring them. Because I'm barely, I think we're about the same. Like I'm more like Gen X, right? And then like I think I was probably like 5 years from like the Gen Y. And I remember like hiring them when they were 22, 23, coming out of school. And I was shocked that they didn't have the same mentality I had, which was like, I just was so nervous about having a job, paying the bills, paying off college, making my parents like maximize my 401k, preparing to like purchase a house. They didn't have that mentality. Their first thing was like the mission of the company. And I was like, well, wait till you have kids. It's all gonna change. And it didn't. Right. So it's like And I've learned a lot from them. I love it when we can learn from younger generations. And I'm so glad they had that mentality to push forward. I kind of think that was where it came from. Like with all these amazing businesses that went out and led the way on how to build an amazing culture that revolves around an amazing purpose for your organization. I kind of think as I go through the data points of, I think they did it to attract amazing employees, which is fine. Like it's a little self-serving, but it was just a great way for this generation to make a mark that a business is more than just dollars and cents. It's an impact, it's a purpose, and it's a mission. And then when you got into those and you saw how people lived it, it didn't feel like work anymore. They had that beautiful North Star that was like exciting to get behind, and you could brag about it to your friends and it didn't create FOMO. It wasn't like I'm going to become a billionaire. It was like we are changing the way the world does this and the world's going to be better, and people are like that's awesome.
Yeah, I feel we could riff for days. There's so much in this. The wonderful Bob Berg, who wrote the Go Giver series, I interviewed a couple of seasons
Love it.
back,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's such a profound little book. And Bob made the point that money is simply an echo of value, and that really resonated with me. And I mean, I'm a chartered accountant, so like I lived in the numbers for years. It was all about the P&L, but I've truly come to understand, I'll be 50 this year, truly come to understand that actually the more value you can bring to the world, the better your P&L will actually look.
I
So
love that.
the more pain that you can solve for people out there, the better you are at enabling or accelerating people towards their goals, then ultimately the healthier your financials will look. And that really struck me. And you talked about your kids. I mean, I have three kids. You mentioned your two boys earlier, Kai and Zane. And I think kids hold a mirror up to us. They hold a mirror up to all of our vulnerabilities, all our kind of ugliness. And having had having a parent, I'm a parent to Anya, who has high functioning autism. She really holds the mirror up to you. And this has really struck me that actually purpose is not just this kind of thing that we must put on our website to kind of tick the box. I feel, and you referred back to it earlier, if you don't have that purpose, then ultimately you're limiting your reservoir of energy for those dark days in November when it's wet and it's dreary, metaphorically, physically, in the business, and you're struggling to understand why you're doing this. So everything that you're saying just really really aligns, Mark. I want to come then to how all of this has informed your approach to sales. I mean, I think of sales as the lifeblood of the business. As an accountant in a former life, cash is the oxygen, but ultimately it requires the lifeblood to bring the oxygen around the system. I love the fact that as an engineer and as a former code junkie, I mean, you've brought science to what I perceived previously as an art. Something in your book resonated again strongly. The fact that you thought, well, we'll just go out and get qualified salespeople. I thought the same. We encourage people in our business to reach the highest level in their profession. So we had chartered marketeers, we chartered procurement people, we chartered accountants, we chartered directors, and this is as a kind of an SME scaling up. And
Love
I
it.
thought, once we're building out our sales team, let's just go and get chartered sales professionals. And lo and
Right.
behold, there aren't chartered sales professionals.
Right.
So we had to go and build our own sales academy, which you referenced, kind of having a similar challenge, and you kind of it's your appeal to people at the end of the book to really elevate the profession. I love the fact that you brought science to this. So I want to dig deep into this today, well, as deep as we can go. And I'm thinking, where do we start here? If Kai and Zane came to you, your two boys, and said, "Look, Dad, we're developing, we're finding this company, and we want to scale it. It's going to really impact the world. How do we develop this sales engine? Because ultimately, this is the holy grail for all businesses." where would you advise them to start in the
Sure.
context of actually building that out? And what I would say to
Sure.
people, actually, I'm holding up Mark's wonderful book, The Sales Acceleration Formula. If you don't already have this, please go out and grab a copy of this book. It's just an absolute Bible when it comes to really developing that sales engine.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot in there, Brendan, that comes like it somewhat encompasses a lot of my life work professionally in sales and scaling businesses. And there's going to be two frameworks that we have to build upon that are interrelated to answer that question. Um, the sales acceleration formula, it was written in the final year of my journey at HubSpot. It's kind of like um it was a serendipitous thing. Like as many of the things that occurred in my career, I did not set out to write the book. Um, I was blessed to have a breakfast with Jill Conrath, an amazing author in the world of sales through, the 90s and 2000s. And she was sort of like, we were just chatting, and then she wrote on a piece of paper, The Art and Science of Sales by Jill Conrath and Mark Roberge. And she was like, I would like to write this book with you. And I was like, Jill, I'm not a very good writer. Like, I didn't do very well on my verbal SAT score. And she's like, don't worry, write a chapter. I'll write a chapter. We'll bring it to my publisher. And I did. And then she's like, this is its own book. So now I was like, okay, great. I'm writing this book. And it was very much just like I suppose, like it wasn't again. I didn't mean to write it. Whatever. It's like an autobiography of like how I built the HubSpot sales team as this gentleman who was a quant, was a programmer, an MIT guy that like had never been in sales before and kind of rethought the way that you build sales. So that's what that book is about, and that's an important framework of what has evolved to be a go-to-market system. That this is not like a lot of people are like, oh, sales is just magic. It's like you go find someone that knows how to do this. It's this black box we don't understand. No, it is a system. Just like we talk about system design, in every single discipline, we have engineering, we have strategy, we have finance. There's like models behind it. We're just so far behind in defining those in sales, but they exist. And the book tries to demystify many of those. Okay. Ironically, I finally gotten around to writing this other book, which is a piece of work I've been working on for 10 years now. And I should have written it 9 years ago, but fortunately, like, it feels very timeless. And it is something that I'm kind of glad I didn't write 9 years ago because I've had now so many data points to attack it with and make it more robust. And that is the science of scaling. And that's something that I'll put out this summer and probably hit the shelves before the turn of the year. We're here in 2025. And that's the way that's related is while the sales acceleration formula inspires how the system works, the science of scaling tells you the order in which you build it. That's really where the sales acceleration formula didn't go into. So that's how they're related. And so when I answer your question, Brennan, of like how am I advising Kind Zane? Um, I'm gonna have to start with the pursuit to go. Let's talk, go full circle here. How do you earn the right to scale? And that's really what I've been studying over the last decade, as I've, you know, as an academic initially, and then in the last 7 years turning into, venture capitalist. And, I don't know if I associate really strongly with the word venture capital. I think that like has grown to have a different meaning. For me, it means like a mentor, advisor, coach, and partner to those who want to now pursue scale. So I need to be a scale expert, right? And so like you have to earn the right to scale. And that's been such a funny journey for me as I've gone out and challenged students and many, many audiences with a very simple question, Brendan. When are you ready to scale? so good for this podcast. I mean, I speak about it so much, and to speak to this with you is such like a cool opportunity. And it's just amazing how simple that question is and how like unsophisticated entrepreneurs and boards and investors are in just how they answer that.
What typically comes back?
Oh, when you hit 1 million in revenue, when you hit 50 customers. I just think that's so wrong. Well, here's let me state what typically comes back, which is a phenomenal answer, is when you have product market fit. Okay. And that's like, who knows? It was Eric Ries, the lean startup. I don't know. Steve Blank contributed to it a lot. This is like dates back 25 years. Fortunately, I had some opportunities to express entrepreneurship before that work. And I can tell you, it was pretty bad. Like we would just like build product in a vacuum. We would sell vaporware. It was just like bad. And that work of product market fit inspired us to like build customers hand in hand with customers, to create design partners, to like be agile. Like it was just, it inspired so much amazing just breakthroughs in how entrepreneurship should work. But what's funny about that is despite that really great answer of product market fit, then you turn around and say, what's product market fit? And that's when it
Exactly.
falls apart. I mean, just Google it and like read the Wikipedia page. It's everything from like, I think Mark Andreessen, who's obviously brilliant, saying like you just know it when you have it. You know, it's a feeling, which like as a quant, that's discomforting to me. To just like, you know, certain, it's just not well defined. And so I think like the majority of people, as we discussed, say it's a certain revenue a customer level. I think that's really, really wrong.
So what would
Because like,
you what would you tend to quantify? How would you quantify product market fit? So if you're,
yes,
in the boardroom and you say, guys, great, we're
yes.
ready to scale this business because we've now achieved product market fit. What are you what are you showing people? What are you telling people in that context in relation to product
Yes.
market fit to give them all confidence and motivation to go, yes, we're absolutely ready to scale?
It's more about customer attention than it is the sale. Okay. So like the sale, if you're really, it just means you're good at sales. And unfortunately, you can trick people. Like if you're good at sales, you can sell ice to Eskimo, and I don't think ice has product market fit with Eskimos. They just don't like. They probably are sick of ice. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? So like, so that's not. I mean, it has to be about the retention and the re so in our world of like software, that's a big, you buy something and then you retain. It means you've tried it and then you've rebought it. And then if you're in apparel or other areas, it just means you come back as a customer, like a repeat purchase. That's really the driver. Okay. And that's how I quantify product market fit. Again, I spend a lot of my time in software. And so like we have certain benchmarks like over 100% net dollar retention and over 90% customer retention. So that just means if we start the year with 100 customers, we want to have of those 100, 90 of them are still with us. And it also means that if those 100 customers were paying us an aggregate of $1 million, that the 90 that are left are paying us more than $1 million because the 10 people that canceled, it was offset by the 90 people who expanded and bought us more. Those I think are the true metrics of, product market fit. And if you're in other businesses, you can look at things, like lifetime value expansion and repeat purchase and other things if that software mechanism doesn't apply to your business. But you get the point. Now, the challenge with that, Brendan, is that definition of product market fit with retention is a significant lagging indicator. It can take months, if not quarters, to truly understand how that is performing relative to what you're doing today. Like I'm making calls, I'm doing demos, I'm closing customers. I don't I don't really have a sense of my product market fit on those outcomes for a long time.
Absolutely. And even if it's an annual subscription model,
Mm.
then it can be
A year.
years.
Exactly. Right. So And that's a big problem in entrepreneurship when we're trying to earn the right to scale. I don't have that time. So that's really been an initial important metric for us is what I call the leading indicator of retention, or LIR.
Love
Now,
it.
this metric has like evolved in various forms from other dimensions of the ecosystem. If you're, a Silicon Valley entrepreneur in the last 15 years, coming out of the product-led growth movement, there was something called the aha moment. Um, there's a couple other, metrics on that. Um, but basically what this is like if you sign up a certain number of customers like this month, what can you observe about their experience with your company and product in the first, say, month? That if that occurs, they're going to be with you forever as a happy customer. And if it doesn't, they're likely to cancel.
And what are
And
we
that
looking
is your,
for there?
yeah, that's your lead indicator of retention. Now that the bad news, the good news is that's an opportunity for true creativity and entrepreneurship, which we like as entrepreneurs. The bad news is there's not a universal answer to that. It's not like daily active user or a lift in, outcomes or profitability, right? It's something that like you you need to kind of create for your business. Now, I'm going to help you because I have a three variable framework to think about it in. Okay. So the three variables are P% of customers do event every T time. P, E, and T. P% of customers do event every T time. Okay. Now let's speak about that in some case examples here. And these are fairly well documented out, in the ecosystem. So Slack, a lot of us know Slack. Okay. So theirs is 80% of customers send 2,000 team messages every month, right? P% of customers do e-event every tea time. 80% of customers send 2,000 team messages every month. That's like such a good foundation in your journey to scale. Like imagine if the founder of Slack started out, there's like 5 engineers in a room, a salesperson, whatever, and they're like, our first North Star is to get to 1 million in revenue. You can imagine the activities that occur versus our first North Star is to get 80% of our customers to send 2,000 team messages every month.
I love that.
Such a better foundation for the business. And so that's my definition of product market fit is looking in the rear view mirror, looking backwards. It's going to be defined by customer retention, but we don't have time for that. So in the immediate term, we have to hyper focus on the lead indicator of retention. Yeah.
Love that. That makes complete sense. I remember the very first guest on this show, Adam Heal, the chair of the ScaleUp Institute here in the UK, and he said you can't fatten a pig by weighing it. So,
Nice.
so in many respects, the LIR is really kind of navigating around that and getting to those key levers of growth that give you visibility, potential visibility over the scalability of what you've got, as opposed to kind of waiting till the revenue numbers come in, uh, 6 months after you've developed something, you're waiting for the finance people to do their thing, whatever. But that AI are really discerning what it is that ultimately is going to drive the potential scalability of this business. So we've got LIRs, leading indicators of retention that are really positive, giving us a sense that we've hit on product market fits here. What next then?
Yes, sure. And so just to like bring it back to the other framework, which is we're also building a go-to-market system, right? So like the science of scaling, where it's like, hey, let's not sell ice to Eskimos. Let's not hyper focus on customer acquisition and revenue at the beginning. Let's focus on finding product market fit. which is defined as a lagging indicator of retention and evaluated as a leading indicator of retention. That's where we are. That has a profound impact on our go-to-market system design. Okay. And so the the go-to-market system it sits on top of the market that you're targeting, for which you define how that buyer buys, your buyer journey, and you build a sales process to help the buyer buy. The inputs to the system are your hires, sales hires, and the demand you create. And the system runs on how you coach and compensate those sellers to like work and behave. And it spits out in sequence three things: sales activities like demos and calls that lead to a forecast that lead to predictable revenue. So that's really what the sales acceleration formula is about, is how I ran that at HubSpot, the system. Okay. And so you can see there's two different frameworks going on here, Brendan. There's one framework that's saying, okay, I have an idea for a business and I need to take it into a hyperscaler. What are the steps I go through? That's the science of scaling that we're unpacking. As we're doing that, we're building a go-to-market system. And the reason why they're related is the go-to-market system evolves as you go through the science steps of the science of scaling. Okay, just like think about one aspect of the system, sales hire. The optimal sales hire at the product market fit phase is way different than the next phases we're going to get to. Like you do not want the top salesperson from Salesforce.com. Like when that person joined Salesforce, they went through a month of like rigorous training with the decks and the pitch books and the manager and the CRM and the objection handling blueprint and the comp plan. And they're just like, let me go make a lot of money. If they come into your company right now, when you're trying to find product market fit, they're just going to come back and say, it's not working. Like you need someone who like can reflect on the patterns and talk to engineers and help you iterate. Like it's a very different person. And the same is true in how you generate demand, and the same is true in how you think about the sales process, right? So I just want to like at this moment just help us see those two frameworks. Okay. So to get to your question, Brendan, we're in the science of scaling and we've defined product market fit. And the question is like, are we now ready to scale? And the answer is no. Because like the legendary Paul Graham, founder of Y Combinator, is quoted to say, do unscalable things early. And that's what you do at the product market fit phase. Like if we're just Slack and we're like, I need to get 80% of my customers to send 2,000 team messages a month. The right behavior is you as a founder are out there onboarding these customers. You know what I mean? Like that's not scalable. That's what he means. Do unscalable things early. Like you should be generating your sales through your venture capital or your advisor network. That does not scale, but that's what you should be doing. So all we've done at this point is we've proven that if we go out next month and sign up 10 customers, that most of them will hit the lead indicator of retention because we have product market fit. But we haven't proven that we can do that profitably. And we can't scale until we know that. Because we have to fix all those unscalable things that we rightly did in the pursuit of product market fit. So now we have to find go-to-market fit. That's what that means. Is I need to have confidence that when I sign up 10 customers next month, not only are they going to be successful on my product, which I proved at product market fit, but I'm going to be successful as a business in how I've sold and onboarded them because it's profitable. And that typically is not measured as GAAP accounting principles profitability, because that encompasses like the cost of our office and things that aren't necessarily going to increase with our scale. So we usually isolate those things down to something that's called unit economics. Okay. And there's some fairly common ways. I mean, very, very bricks and mortar academic setting, it's just the marginal revenue is greater than the marginal cost. Okay. If you want to go back to economics, that you can study it that way. So all you're doing is you're isolating how much revenue you're producing from a sale and you're subtracting the cost, and that this needs to be positive. Okay. And that doesn't include like other aspects in the world of like software and where a lot of entrepreneurship is done today. There's other metrics people pay attention to, like payback period. How many months does it take for you to recoup the cost of customer acquisition? 12 months or less is phenomenal. There's something called LTV to CAC, lifetime value divided by customer acquisition. And for whatever reason, the world obsesses with a ratio of 3 to 1. So if you're greater than 3 to 1, so these are metrics, and that's essentially what we have to achieve step next after product market fit. Okay, and so you got product market fit measured by retention, measured by the lead indicator retention. You've got go to market fit measured by unit economics, profitability. And let's just say we're gonna be measuring it by LTV to CAC greater than 3. What's really funny, Brendan, is if you hired a salesperson to join your company and you asked the salesperson like if they were like, "What's my job?" The absolute correct answer is to produce an LTV to CAC greater than 3.
I
But
suspect not too
that
many are going to respond to
no,
that.
nor would the 27-year-old account executive, their head would blow up. You know what I mean? So that's why, in the same way that we extracted back the long-term retention to a lead indicator retention, we have to algebraically extract back our pursuit of an LTV to CAC greater than 3 back to tangible numbers like what is my annual contract value? What is my close rate on a lead? What is like my sales cycle? Right. And so that's a little bit of an easier algebraic extraction so that you can, instead of saying to the account executive, your job is LTV to CAC greater than 3, you can say to them, your job is to sell $1 million of software this, year, while preserving the lead indicator retention, and I will pay you $300,000 in exchange for that. And we can extract back like best practices around pipeline generation and close rates and all the fun things that we know about, but that's how it fits into the pursuit of scale.
And in the context of HubSpot, what size were you at that stage?
We got all of this wrong. We had to solve it in terms of reactivity. I would say like it took us, and it took most SaaS businesses. We were founded in like the 2005, 2006 era. I don't think we realized how critical customer retention was to the viability of our business for 2 or 3 years. And that was every SaaS business. It was just like, because it didn't matter in the on-premise world. Like the best sales team won in on-prem. Because like once you won the deal, most of these sales were to large organizations. That meant that there was a champion there that put their career on the line to buy your product for millions of dollars. The team bought 100, had 100 servers in their local area network. They loaded the server on the software on. They trained the whole staff for 6 months, and they paid for the whole thing up front. They were stuck with it, and that's why the software sucked. I mean, we've heard the word shelfware. I think what the numbers at the time was like 80% of software just wasn't even used. It sucked. But like that changed with SaaS is now we were renting our software on a subscription. Easy to adopt, no more servers, no more loading, very little training. You just sign up with a login and you're good to go. But easy to leave. So like retention was key, and it took us forever to figure this out. So this was kind of like, because we were so early, we were piecing this stuff together in a very reactive mode. And I feel like we really got it to hum probably 4 or 5 years in. But I do think that like today, in the same way that the lean startup has, I think helped us to really understand the art of entrepreneurship on a deeper level and more tangible level, I think today's unicorns are understanding this out of the gate. And they're getting it right in the first like year.
There's so much in this. In the interest of ensuring we cover off the three elements and not leave people hanging, conscious of time.
Yeah.
So we have our product market fit.
Yes.
The confidence gleaned from are leading indicators of revenue as opposed to the lagging indicators of revenue. We've now affirmed our go-to-market fit in the context of the LTV to CAC 3 to 1, or or whatever we determine at that stage is appropriate for our business in our respective industry. What is the third aspect then in
Hmm.
relation to the science of scaling?
Yeah. Now you're ready to scale. That's the easy one. But here's the deal. Here's the deal. The easy part is you are now ready to scale. So we've answered the first question, which is when are we ready to scale? The answer to that question is when you have product market fit and go to market fit. And those things need to be done in sequence. You can't do go to market fit before you've proven product market fit. Because if you do go to market fit after, you might optimize around the wrong product market combination. And it's just really like it's so hard even for the best of the best to find product market fit. Why waste resources on go to market fit too when you should just hyper focus? So that's an easy answer now is we're ready to scale when we have product market fit and go to market fit. They're done in sequence and we have very detailed insight on that based on our data, not other people's perceptions. Okay. So the next critical question, Brendan, and it's an easier one, is how fast can we scale? And like you've been in these conversations and in the world I live in, right? Venture capital and software and all that kind of stuff. It's insane. It's like triple, triple, double, double. That's the answer. Really? It's like, oh, let's bring up what like, Databricks did in their first 5 years, and that's your number. Really? There's no like we have just such a different context than Databricks at that time. And so basically the answer to that is you're going to establish a pacing. Because what most people do is they're like, okay, I have to triple, triple, double, double, because that's what my venture capital investor told me to do. And so, according to my spreadsheet, I need to have 15 salespeople this year, even though I only have two. So, my plan is to hire 15 salespeople next month. That's the scale plan. And that is very bad because, like, you just can't, get the go to market system to run that fast. Right. So what instead you have to think about is let's hire 2 reps every other month and let's see how that goes. And when I say see how that goes, it means you look at the early indicators of product market fit, the LIR, and you look at the early indicators of go to market fit, the unit economics math, and you just continually measure that. And if it stays green, then go faster. 2 reps a month. And if it breaks, you're going to know a year ahead of your peers because your peers are evaluating if it breaks based on what happened with all those sales activities and the customers that it created and the retention that came out of it and the board meeting that occurred that summarized all that information in the P&L, which happens a year later than the actual activity. So when it breaks, you get to intervene so much sooner and fix it, and you get to 2 reps a month and then 4 reps a month and then 8 reps a month. And now you're a unicorn in a very calculated way.
I think we will have likely blown a lot of people's heads, Mark. To make this now super practical for people listening, because we're capturing a lot of data along the way. Who's supporting us here? As a founder who may not, might be an engineer who absolutely loves the product that they've designed, loves the software that they've designed. We're bringing science to scaling. What support do they need in terms of the information, the dials to direct and inform which way they go next, how fast they should go, where they shouldn't go? In this early stage of scaling,
Mm,
what does that team look like?
mm,
And what are they feeding back on a on
mm.
a on a regular basis?
On the product market fit phase, there's a high degree of dependency on the builders, the engineers. because oftentimes the lead indicator retention, remember Slack 2000 team messages. At HubSpot, it was if, we had 25 features in our platform, if they used five of the features, that was it, five or more. So that has to be derived out of like usually product log, usage logs, right? So it's an engineering task. Like good engineers are like constantly logging activities so they can accurately debug, issues. And so there's no new resources that are needed there. It's really just like a mindset that team has. And then on the go-to-market fit, it's really just like a reasonable job on your sales tech landscape. All you're measuring here are the things we measure today, like what what qualifies an MQL, what's the cost of a marketing qualified lead, how quickly and at what percentage does that marketing qualified lead turn into pipeline? I mean, you choose we haven't unfortunately standardized a lot of stuff, but like I just use some top common terms and how quickly and at what percentage does the pipeline convert into a sale? What is the ACV, the annual contract value? How much are you paying your salespeople? How does that equate to a CAC, cost of customer acquisition cost? These are all terms we know. It's just assembling them in the right way to evaluate a purpose, which in this case is unit economics and go-to-market fit, right? So like, there's no new people here needed to pull this off. It's just a guide as to like how it fits together and the order in which it's evaluated to answer these two critical questions. When are we ready to scale and how fast? Like they seem so simple, but I didn't like go out and be like, oh, how can I like go talk about something cool? It was like me sitting in these boardrooms being like, why are these great companies failing? And it's because they're not answering these questions right. They're basing those answers on some unrelated event, like someone gave you Series A check, or some unrelated context, like this is what Databricks did in their first 5 years.
Conscious of time, but I said at the outset we could riff on this for days. This is I feel we've just opened this out now, and we have to kind of wrap it up and bring it to a close. So I'm going to invite you back on for a part two whenever you've released your new
Sure, Brandon.
book,
Oh, it'd be great
Mark.
to jam with you.
Super. Before we get into the kind of the close and the timeless takeaways, what practically would you advise those those SME founders, those SME leaders who have an aspiration to scale, who have listened to this, we've kind of bombarded them with, if they're not in the software space, we've certainly bombarded them with a lot of new terms. We've brought this kind of algebraic, formulaic mindset or lens to what they're currently doing, which is just in the bowels of getting this out, getting some feedback. What would you recommend? What would you appeal to our listeners to do practically from here? I'm appealing to them to go and grab your first book. What would you appeal them to do, Mark, at this stage, practically?
Yeah, I would say like where this falls apart, and this again happens in the ecosystem that I'm at, but I can broaden it out. And the ecosystem that I'm at is like you have to align your board around this mentality. It's so difficult. And I think the way to do it is no board would ever let you set up a plan that's where you're going to burn $1 billion in a year. We all can agree that's too fast, right? And no board would ever, approve a plan where, in a venture capital context at least, that you were going to grow 5% a year. So we have these like outer bounds on like where we instinctively know, but I would just like try to shrink that in to help people understand you know, where we can agree is too fast and too slow and incapable. And so like when people throw out these like, random growth trajectories, if you can boil that back down into these input metrics of like how many reps do we need to hire And how does that compare to what we've done historically? And how much demand do we have to create? And how much does that compare to what we've done historically? Now you're having a very fruitful conversation, whether that's with your investors or board, or whether that's your constituents, if you're a bootstrap family business or whatever, that's your constituents at the executive level. So just like understand your business at that level of like, what are the inputs to your scale formula and how can those be like slightly improved to drive further scale as opposed to just these haphazard numbers. That would really be the next step to embrace this.
Yeah, again, it makes so much sense. And I mean, technically, of course, scaling is just less than a doubling of your business measured by either revenue growth or employee growth over a 3-year period. So average annualized growth of 20% year on year, as measured in either revenue or employees over a 3-year period. So the that always seems like a sensible place to start if we're talking about scaling, because
Mhm.
essentially that's how it's defined. You have just this incredible, rich, lived experience in relation to scaling. And given the earlier part of the conversation, I feel a great sense of really what it's all about in the wider sense of certainly living a rich life and a meaningful life. On that note, could you share with our audience 3 timeless takeaways?
Oh yeah, sure. Perfectly in line with that, right? I mean, I think one kind of came to life here, and it's something that came to me that I think is, for me, it's the meaning of life, and that is to understand my unique purpose and use that purpose to, make the world a better place, right? And I think that's so critical. I think these comments become more critical in age of AI, where like, however we're unique, I think it's going to take a long time for AI to match that. There's something to like the miracle of life and the human being existence that like if you can really reflect on that, I just kind of think like AI is going to be able to do the menial tasks relatively quickly. I think we're underestimating how fast that's going to happen, but we're estimating, I think, how fast they're going to be able to be creative and innovative. I think that's magical human ability. And whatever you think your unique purpose is probably aligned with those attributes. And so just lean into those. Um, I would say the second one that I would say that may not be as timeless, but it's going to be really important over the next decade as we enter this AI era is this is going to be a massive shift, in my opinion. I think it's going to be on par with how our species evolved from a nomadic species to one that of agriculture and farming, that one that existed in feudalism and then you had this vision for democracy. I think we're on that level of shift. And unfortunately, I think this one's a little outside of our control. The cat's out of the bag. It can go very badly, it could go very well. But all I ask is that, power will probably be in the hands of a select few. And just remember how to use that to think holistically around the betterment of our species. Because we have an opportunity to be the first, species that we know of that can put a roof over our head and food on our plate without exerting physical energy. That is insane. And that can lead to a remarkable existence for people to just live a free life, to raise children, to explore hobbies, to, um, you know, you know, to expand our mind, um, and to find like a deeper purpose than we can ever imagine. But it's gonna take like a very different mentality than we're wired to do in a capitalistic existence. And I'm not pushing like socialism or anything like that. I'm just saying like this it's just the in a way like I do think like freedom and democracy are at risk right here. And so like we just have to keep that in mind, especially those who are in tech. Um, and then I think the third thing that is sort of like a driver to that, which is like, there's been some experiments on things like UBI, universal basic income. They're not working because we haven't rewired our existence, like our perceptions on life and the purpose of life. And I'll just like share two very timeless things that I try to live by. And that is to replace ego with humility and to replace greed with service. Okay, so replace ego with humility and replace greed with service. I think those are going to be some underlying principles that will help us and our grandchildren, our great grandchildren have just a remarkably purposeful existence.
Those are so profound. And it goes back, actually, a nice link back to what you said right at the outset, which is scaling as a privilege. And I feel that business for good is good for business. If you set out to positively impact the world in some way, benefit the people on this planet, or the planet, or both, then ultimately you're going to be very, very valuable as a business as a result of doing that. And it's a privilege, not a right, in terms of venturing on that journey. Those are really
Well said.
profound. You mentioned you're about to release your new book. You're very, very generous with what you share on your own website, Stage 2 Capital. We didn't even get into that today. I mean, now you're supporting those companies who are seeking to start this journey and make a positive impact in the world. And I think that's wonderful. Again, very aligned in that regard. What else? What's next for you, Mark?
I don't know. Like we really did get into stage 2 capital, Brendan, because we're the foundation of our entire investment thesis and methodology and how we support is the science of scaling.
Oh, brilliant.
So everything we talked about is like how I'm bringing or we are bringing that to life through our firm and very much our purpose. I don't know, like what's next for me. That's the funny thing is like, as I reflected on my career, you know, I didn't pursue any of the big things that occurred to me. We can't get into it now, but I did not pursue a job at HubSpot. I did not pursue a career in sales. We did talk about this one. I did not pursue writing a book. I did not pursue joining the faculty at Harvard Business School. And I did not pursue starting a venture capital firm. These were all things that came to me. They were presented to me that caused me to veer off what I perceived as my path. And they actually led to the biggest outcomes in my career and the biggest impacts I've had on my society. So I'm an open book that's constantly listening. I have no idea. But, the things that are on my plate right now keep me quite busy. So I think this is probably, at least on the professional side, where it takes me.
Well, I have no doubt that there are even greater things around the corner, because what I'm sensing is somebody who has always leaned into opportunities with great humility, and actually with a mindset, with a mental lens of actually serving others rather than coming to this with what's in it for you. So given everything that you have already accomplished, I just sense significant opportunities, continuing opportunities, great opportunities for you around the corner, Mark. People will be intrigued by this conversation, I have no doubt. If they want to connect with you and find out a little bit more about Stage 2 Capital, about your work in HubSpot, about the sales acceleration formula, about your new book, where best to connect, Mark? Where best to find out more?
Yeah, I would say LinkedIn is where a general where we push things through. We're at stage2.capital and we've got a very, active LinkedIn presence. I have a very active LinkedIn presence. Always a great place to be in touch and follow us.
Brilliant. Well, look, I want to thank you for an incredible conversation, incredible value, as I mentioned, delivered with wonderful humility, great service. And certainly my world's a better place for having had this conversation today. Mark, I wish you every success with everything you're doing. I look forward to hosting you again on the show and hearing more. Thank you.
You too, Brennan. An opportunity, such a humble opportunity to be here with you.
Oh, thank you.